today, and I'd give anything to take a bunch of the moisture in eastern North Dakota and put it in southwestern.
Well, I tell you what, I think we'd give you some of it. Congressman, you know what the real issue is that's playing out all over the papers and in the state, and that was a confrontation or a conversation that you had with Melissa Merrick, and that was overheard by other directors. And I think it's only fair. It's come up on the show already. I think people have a background of what they is in the news reports. Let's get your account of what you think happened here.
Well, first of all, the news reports have been very good. Chuck Haga, not surprisingly, did a fantastic job of outlining the whole issue. And what it was a meeting, you're right, with a number of directors of crisis centers and association in North Dakota that I met with, and to hear some of their concerns. A lot of their concerns, of course, were budgetary, and I'm fully aware of that. And then we got into the Violence Against Women Act bill that I, of course, voted for. I also spoke for a Republican alternative to it. But at the end of the day, the Democrat bill that passed the Senate was the bill that prevailed and got the floor for final passage, and I supported it. While I didn't think it was perfect, I voted for it anyway because, you know, Joel, as you and I have talked about before, sometimes we let perfect get in the way of the right thing, and I want to be one of those people. I still want to work to improve what I think are some constitutional flaws and could be challenges that could actually overturn the law. But that said, that was the point of the conversation that I was trying to have with Ms. Merrick, and clearly she and I got into a probably more of a debate, as I think Chuck pointed out, that would be more suitable for my colleagues in Congress than for somebody who's spent much of their adult life trying to protect children. And so
whose fault was that?
And I take responsibility for that.
Okay, and I have to ask you why. I mean, why, if you're speaking to women who are fighting against violence against women and program directors when it comes to some of these sensitive issues, would you have, and I think it's only fair to ask whether or not, in fact, you did say this. I mean, did you say that you don't feel safe on the reservation right now?
Here's what, let me put it this way. I probably said something to that effect, and here was the context. Talking about the bigger issue of due process, innocence until proven guilty, the constitutional questions here are not trifle questions. So I said, and Joel, I'm not afraid to go on a reservation. In fact, I hope to be able to be up in Spirit Lake next week. I love Indian people. I love advocating for Indian issues my whole adult life. Sometimes face to face with a store clerk or a hotel, front office worker, and sometimes on the floor of the House of Representatives. So it's not that I have any fear. My point is, I'm trying to make this larger issue discussion, this larger constitutional question, in the context of illustration and analogy. I think in her case, in her defense, and I really mean this, I think for Ms. Merrick, what really got challenging was when we were discussing things at Spirit Lake, and we know about the child protection challenges there, the invited imposition of the federal government at a greater level there. I think she probably takes some of that personally, and I understand that. And she's committed to protecting children just as I'm committed to that. And I think my record, both personally and publicly, would attest to that. But that doesn't absolve me of my responsibilities, Joel, to be more sensitive when I'm talking to particular groups or listening probably to particular groups, and including talking to the public like I am right now. As you know, that's a responsibility I take very seriously.
Well, and she states that you stated that you wanted to wring the tribal council's neck and slam them against the wall. Did you say that, Congressman?
Not like that, Joe. I said there are times, in fact, I've said this on live TV, there are times I just want to grab some of these leaders by the lapel, so we've got to solve these problems. These are hurting children. In defense of these children, we need to help them, and don't throw sovereignty at me if I'm trying to help protect a child. And if you know what I'm saying, so in the context of that, I get indignant when children are not being protected or being hurt, just as she does, obviously. But I think in this context, she probably put on her tribal side, came out a little more than the protection side, and again, that's not her fault, Joel. But her circumstances are different than my circumstances. I believe her responsibilities are different than my responsibilities. My responsibility as a public official that loves Indian people as well as all people people and represent them as well as anybody else, my responsibilities are greater in terms of the way I conduct myself in public discourse. And for that, I take responsibility. I do not blame her at all.
Congressman, we had a caller call in, and I read in some of the reports that after the room, there was tension in the room, and there was someone visually upset that you went and you hugged her, and she wasn't comfortable with you hugging her. Would you like to speak to that?
She was sitting next to me, and I put my arm around her and said, "I really do love you," because she was visibly upset, and that's what I did. And although she was really she said, "Thank you," actually, is what she said. And so it was, no, I didn't get up and go give somebody a big hug or anything like that, but I did. She was sitting right next to me. I did just put my arm around her and said, "I really do love you." I don't like that kind of tension, Joe. I don't like confrontation. I sometimes I might like it with you. You know what I mean? When it's more appropriate or where it's more part of the context.
So where do we go from here, Congressman? I mean, what do you do if things are in the situation they're in? What do you do to make this right?
Well, I think I'm doing it right now. I have also tried to reach out to Ms. Merrick, and she's chosen not to hear from me right now. I understand that, and I respect that. I'm hopeful that at some point, hopefully fairly soon, that we can have a discussion, that I can ask her to forgive me for any offense that I've committed against her, and if she can, great, and if she can't, I understand that as well, Joel. To me, that's the biggest thing for me personally. We're in the season of reconciliation in our, in our culture and in our faith, and I hope that she would accept that apology from me. And again, it's unconditional. I don't want in any way for anybody to think I don't take full responsibility for whatever happened. I was there. I'm the congressman. At the same time, we also, more importantly, I think, Joel, need to move forward and make sure we can get the restoration of funding for these crisis centers. We need women to feel safe and empowered. We need to make victims out of victims. We need to make sure prosecutors have the adequate tools and resources to prosecute crimes. And more importantly, what we really want to do, and what I think what we need to do, and we're all committed to doing, is ending the violence. It's one thing to protect victims of violence, but boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could do more to end the violence? And that's where I think Melissa and I would have a lot of agreement, especially on the law enforcement side, because while I have some concerns about the constitutionality of the judicial portion of Violence Against Women Act, where I feel really strongly is that we should have more opportunity for law enforcement officers themselves to enter into situations where there might be non-native men involved. Prior to prosecution, violence needs to be able to be stopped. That's the real goal in my view.
But Congressman, if you in any way feel as though this endangers a white man in a reservation court, I cannot hardly imagine what a Native American feels like in a white man's court. And so,
isn't that the truth?
I guess I want to make this point, though. Do you feel you owe it to Ms. Merrick and to other Native Americans to follow through now and go to a tribal court and see the professionalism and see firsthand what you were critical of?
Oh, I wasn't critical of tribal courts. See, that's the part that I don't.
Well, but that's what she accuses you of. I mean, she accuses you of saying that you don't feel you would get a fair shake in tribal court. And so when I said what's the action? No, but what I'm saying the action items here are after something like this is, if I'm you, Kevin, I'm going to go to tribal court. I'm going to go sit in at Spirit Lake at tribal court, and I'm going to make sure people see me there. I'm going to take it in so that people know that I cared enough to say, hey, I want to check this out.
You bet. No, I'm happy to do that, actually, Joel. And I have actually started the process of arranging for a time to do that, perhaps as early as next week, if that time presents itself. I think the problem is I'm talking about, and I did that day, was talking about the larger, higher level issue of the constitutionality of due process of innocence until proven guilty, the moral high ground in our Constitution that allows us to put perpetrators in prison with justice. And again, not her fault, but she equates it to her personal situation that could have been solved by this act. And I'd say we pass laws for all people. I didn't pass this one. Of course, by the way, there are a lot of people who do, including, National Association of Federal Defenders, Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, people that spoke out against this portion of bylaw where the concerns have been raised. But that said, my concern is not about her tribal court or anybody else's tribal court. It's about the concept of United States citizens being subject to another court while they're still in the United States and then not having the same recourse as others. Because my bigger concern, frankly, is that this could get overturned all over these technicalities, and I prefer it not get overturned. That's always been my position. And I stated my position that day, realizing how she was unable to separate the larger question with her personal situation, and that's not her fault. So that's not her fault. That's my responsibility to more clearly and more sensitively project that information.
Congressman, I thank you for your time today, sir. I appreciate your
time. I always thank you for yours because it's an important venue, and I appreciate your willingness to have me on.
You bet. Kevin Cramer, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully we will, based upon what he said, get Melissa Merrick on and hear what her take on all of that was. What she says. Clearly, she wrote it. You can find it. Amy will have the link on our website. You can find it there.